that song.
I'm in love with that song.
I love that song.
I'm in love with that song.
I love that song.
I love that song.
I'm in love with that song.
I love that song.
I'm in love with that song. Buy me a ticket on the last train home tonight because I got to get back for the I'm in love with that song podcast on the Pantheon Podcast Network. I'm your host, Brad Page, and this episode we're exploring a song by Al Stewart, a deep cut from his 1978 album Time Passages. This is a song called Life in Dark Water. Now, I got to admit, I don't know all that much about Al Stewart, really, but luckily, I happen to know somebody who does. Craig Smith, former host of the Pods and Sods Network, has joined us on this show before, and he's the biggest Al Stewart fan I know. So I figured, let's bring Craig back on the show, and we'll all explore Life in Dark Water.
No sound comes from the sea above me. No message crackles through the radio leaves. They'll never know how strange life in dark water can be.
All right. Well, Craig Smith, thank you for joining me on this episode to talk about Al Stewart. You are the biggest Al Stewart fan I know, so I couldn't think of anyone better to come on and do this with me. So thank you for joining me.
Absolutely. There are others of us around too. You may be familiar with Brian Lennon.
Yes, I know that young man, the upstanding citizen, Brian Lennon.
Yeah, for the most part.
My knowledge of Al Stewart is fairly minimal. You know, usually I do a ton of research for these things, but I thought I would be lazy and go to the expert I know to take care of that. So let's talk about Al Stewart. And what we're going to do is we're going to be talking about a song that I guess I would put this maybe in like the middle of his career.
Yep. Almost dead middle.
Yeah. From the Time Passages album. And let's talk about how he gets to this record. If you could fill me in, because I know none of this. So tell me about Al Stewart up to this point.
Okay. I should preface by saying that Eric and I were fortunate enough to interview Al Stewart in the very, very early days of Pods and Sods, which was a podcast that I was part of for 10 years. But he comes from kind of the London scene in the mid-'60s at a place called... Now, I've heard it referenced as Les Cousins, but during our interview, I'm fairly certain he called it Les Cousins, which was a folk club. He played there with people like Paul Simon. Roy Harper, who is also somebody that I know you and I both admire, also comes from that same pocket of time. His first album came out in 1967. It was called Bedsitter Images. It was later re-released as the first album with some different tracks. What is more interesting is that his second album, Love Chronicles, beat John Lennon by a year for throwing the very weighted F word into a song, which is part of the title track, which is a side-long like folk number going through like a bunch of relationships that he was in.
And so it fell that I came up to London to look for fortune and fame. Starry-eyed in my seaside success isn't much to shore up the game. First girl I met there, I thought I'd get there, but the first girl was nearly the last girl. She left my eyes in the train. She sat on my floor in the dead of the night, rolling a joint and looking round for a light.
His first four albums, very folky. And then after that, starting with Past, Present, and Future into modern times, and then you start to move towards Ear of the Cat and Time Passages, you're getting into his commercial peak, as it were. He meets Alan Parsons, And Alan Parsons, I believe, did some work on Modern Times also, but he started to get more radio play around this time with a song from Modern Times called Carol.
Sometimes it seems unimaginable that you were ever any other way. With your white rose face and your open clothes, embroidered jeans and silver chains, you're a well-known face in all the hangout places where the lost souls congregate. You sit all night but you talk too fast, I don't know what you're trying to say. Oh Carol, I think it's time for running for cover. Believe me, you're everyone's and nobody's lover. You got a one-way ticket for all your yesterdays. I know your daddy said he talked to you.
Of course, Year of the Cat is the song that over here propels him. It was a huge hit here, of course. Time Passages is the follow-up album. There's another hit. The title track flies very close to the blueprint that Year of the Cat was built from.
It was late in December, the sky turned to snow. All around the day was going down slow. Night like a river beginning to flow. I felt the beat of my mind go drifting into time passages. Yes, go falling in the fading light. Time passages. Buy me a ticket on the last train home tonight.
And then after that, kind of, he did a great album after Time Passages called 24 Carats. Had a killer band called Shot in the Dark. Amazing live record after that. And then kind of after that, his releases get a little more, I don't know that I want to say a little more synthetic, as 80s albums are wont to do. But so much good stuff in that catalog, even going, in the later years. He never lost it. To kind of just sum up what he is, I can't remember if he said this during our interview or if I read it somewhere else, but he said, ideally, what he considers himself is a lyricist, period. Mm-hmm. And I think his singing is fantastic. It may not be everybody's cup of tea. It is a very mellow, leaning towards yacht rocky delivery, which I happen to love. But I think once you get into like the middle period of Al Stewart, it kind of goes from folk to more of like, I don't even know if this is the right term, but like a progressive folk. There's more arrangement wise going on in these songs, and across the board, fantastic lyrics, amazing lyrics. I'm an idiot when it comes to history and things like that. The funny thing is, if you're looking at an Al Stewart lyric, without looking at who penned the song, it could either be Al Stewart or Iron Maiden, given the balance of British history in both of their catalogs. It's amazing.
Right.
But yeah, what a rich catalog. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with any of the early stuff. Like most people, my first exposure to him was Year of the Cat, which was a bit of a mixed blessing because this is back in the day when AM radio was still king.
Oh, yeah.
And that song was a big hit on AM radio. And at that point, AM radio was so formulaic and formatted that you knew exactly what song they were going to play at what time, to the point where, like, on the school bus, they would play the AM radio, and without fail would always be at one kid's bus stop, and they would play Night Moves by Bob Seger. And then, like, 2 stops later, it would be Year of the Cat by Al Stewart.
On a morning from a Bogart movie, in a country where they turn back time, you go strolling through the crowd like Peter Lorre contemplating a crime. She comes out of the sun in a silk dress, running like a watercolor in the rain. Don't bother asking for explanation, she'll just tell you that she came in the year of the cat.
But it got to the point where I hated both of those songs because you just heard them like every day, and that's what AM radio was like back then. When you have a song that just kind of you're sick of, sometimes it can throw you off a little bit. But Time Passages, that song I always liked quite a bit. We're going to take a look at a song from that record. This is a song called Life in Dark Water. And it always jumped out to me from this record. I wouldn't call it heavy, but it's an intense song. It definitely has that Alan Parsons kind of Pink Floyd light production to it.
Yeah.
It's very rich production, the whole album, but particularly in this song. Do you know the history of this song?
I don't know too much of the history aside from there are some things that I can tell you about things that he said when introducing the song live. When he wrote this song on the Time Passages concert, this is what he says. This is a number which is about being stranded alive, thinking that you're the last person in the world alive, alone on a seabed in a nuclear submarine. It's a psychedelic sea song in which we never find out if the narrator is alone or not. And then he goes on to say that the Marie Celeste, which is referenced in the lyrics, was a ship found floating off the coast of the British Isles in the Atlantic Ocean with nobody on board, half-eaten meals and half-smoked cigars, one of the great mysteries of the sea. In his trance, he thinks that he's back in the Marie Celeste. However, Al is wrong about this.
Yeah, the ship was actually called the Mary Celeste, not the Marie Celeste, but he's not the only person to misname it. A lot of people called it the Marie Celeste, but it was the Mary Celeste. It was a ship built in Canada, registered in the U.S., that just showed up off the coast of wherever it was with nobody on board and, some damage, but not trashed or anything. And the lifeboat was missing, and they never found any of the crew. Just kind of one of those creepy stories, but interesting.
The kind of story that podcasters make a mint off these days.
Right. If we were a true crime type podcast, we dig into that.
It's never too late. But when he introduces the song, he does say Mary, just to be clear. But in the lyrics, I believe it's printed Marie.
Right.
And he in the song, he pronounces it Marie with a rolling R, which I cannot do. So yeah, that's the Mary Celeste.
Yeah, it's very interesting and intriguing lyrically, and I guess we can kind of talk about it as we go along. But that was one of the things that pulled me into the song.
And musically as well.
Yes.
Like, I when I got into Al Stewart, I don't know that I would have expected a song like this. It's just like such an epic sound.
Yes.
That was the word that I kept coming to.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not really something that I would have expected from Al Stewart. If you only know the few hits, this is it's darker. It's a lot more atmospheric. Like, this is a lot spookier.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's dig into the track. It opens relatively atmospherically with kind of a riff or chord change that sounds pretty familiar. It's the James Bond chord change, right?
The chords, from what I looked up, and this can be wrong or not, but on the intro, the chords are D minor, B flat with a D bass, D minor 6. So that's where that note is moving around, giving it that James Bond feel. Yeah, good ear. I didn't pick that out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that it's like a knockoff or anything, but it's very effective. I like it.
It works really well.
Oh, come away from the day, here I stay, living on the bottom of the sea.
And then the first verse, he's talking about living in the bottom of the sea, down metal snake corridors, steely gray, engines hum for nobody but me.
Oh, come away from the day, here I stay, living on the bottom of the sea. Down Metal Snake corridor, steely gray, engines hum for nobody but me.
Very descriptive. I mean, it puts you in a place, right? You could feel this guy alone on this submarine. Right from the beginning, I'm wondering, how did this guy get here? Why is he all by himself?
You're dropped into the story.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you're literally dropped in the middle of the story trying to figure out what is going on.
And even the line, no message crackles through the radio leads, just another worded so well, you know.
No sound comes from the sea above me. No message crackles through the radio leads. They'll never know how strange life and dark water can be.
This is one of those songs for me where it's the music and the lyrics are both a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I mean, they're intertwined, right? The mood of the music fits the mood of the lyrics so perfectly. And it takes a certain level of confidence to just plop people down in the middle of the story. Like, there's no setup for this, right? There's no, we set sail from the port. Mm-hmm. None of that. Like,
that's right.
You're just suddenly at the bottom of the ocean, alone on a submarine with this guy, not knowing, as he doesn't know, apparently, who else is out there.
Yeah, fantastic. That's what that year of the cat money make you write songs like that.
Yeah.
Drop the listener wherever you want.
Right. You can afford to make a record that sounds this good too.
One of the things that I really love about the arrangement, the piano tinkles.
Yes.
No sound comes from the sea above me.
In my notes, I had basically the same words you're using. I had tinkling glass-like piano. Yeah, just very, it's like icicles in a way. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, absolutely. Like something visual was coming to mind. I think that describes it very, very well.
No sound comes from the sea above me. No message crackles through the radio leads. They'll never know how strange life and dark water can be.
Talk about the second verse. Here you've got some like sonar pings in the background. I really like that. They're very subtle.
Yes.
Oh, mariner, spare a thought when you pass those who live the submarine life. Fire in the deep, sonar eyes never sleep, hiding like a shadow in the night.
Yeah, not completely unlike the pings we hear in another masterpiece that I know you and I both love.
Yes. Yep. Where those are much more upfront. I mean, they're kind of like the key to that song.
Mm-hmm. These are very subtle.
Yeah. Yeah. And the bass is playing octaves.
Yeah.
Jet planes nose through the clouds above me. They look for radar traces of me to see.
Jet planes nose through the clouds above me. They look for radar traces of me to see.
So then I started thinking, well, did this guy like hijack a submarine? Like, why are they looking for him? How does he know that they're looking for him? Are they really looking for him, or is he imagining that?
Right. That was my thought. Like, how does he know they're looking for him? This is kind of likely all in his head.
Yeah. But you never get an answer to any of this, which is the song always leaves you to decide.
Exactly. And it could also be just like his hope,
Right.
that there is somebody out there looking for him.
Right. Let's talk about his voice, because you kind of mentioned that it might not be for everyone. I guess it's a little bit of an acquired taste.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an extremely white guy voice, right?
Oh, yeah.
There's no R&B or soul or anything to his singing. And he does have, he's got a bit of a lisp, which is something that I can relate to. You don't hear that a lot on pop records. You certainly would never hear that today. You'd never make it on American Idol.
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely not.
But how did you take his voice? I mean, were you immediately taken by it? Did it put you off at all, or?
It didn't put me off. Year of the Cat is part of my DNA. One of those songs that before I got into Al Stewart, kind of like, and you know what? Here's another guy with a very similar voice, Alone Again Naturally, like Gilbert O'Sullivan.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that I didn't have that roadblock at all. Like I knew Year of the Cat from being a kid, and I'm like, oh, this is this dude's voice. There's nothing about it that I find unpleasant. It's I don't know that smooth is because that's going to make him sound like a crooner, but there's absolutely no grit in Al Stewart's voice. In that respect, it is very smooth. So like Al Stewart's voice that's not going to slow me down any. How about you?
Well, I think I'm not sure I'd say it was off-putting. I thought it was a little strange. I didn't necessarily love it, but again, that was kind of all mixed up in the thing of just being sick of Year of the Cat. Yeah, it doesn't bother me, but I can see why some people might be turned off by it.
I get it.
But what I like about it today is that it's not generic.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody else sounds like that. And today, I think because of the influence of things like American Idol, singers are so generic and they're so auto-tuned and everything that we've lost a lot of this individuality.
Fire in the deep, sonar eyes never sleep, hiding like a shadow in the night. Jet planes nose through the clouds above me. They look for radar traces of me to see. They'll never know how strange life in dark water can be.
And then there's this bridge, which is pretty incongruous for the rest of the song. It's kind of this very Beatley British music hall sound.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and there's this kind of slapback delay on the vocal, just a minimal delay time on almost a radio broadcast sound.
Yeah, absolutely. Radio EQ.
Wonder what the stars look like coming out tonight. Tell my girl she must be strong. She sits and waits all night long. Yeah, just looking for a better day. She'll have to find another way to go.
And we're moving into like tack piano, or
Right.
very chorus affected piano.
Wonder what the stars look like coming out tonight. Tell my girl she must be strong. She sits and waits all night long. Yeah, just looking for a better day.
It's that kind of player piano, old barroom feel.
Stride piano.
Yeah. The guitar's there, but it's just kind of doing these kind of staccato chords. It's really, the piano comes to the front. The bass is almost kind of feels like what a tuba would be playing, almost a oompa kind of sounds. It's very interesting bridge to put into this song.
The one thing that's interesting about this part to me is that on the record, it really feels shoehorned in terms of how the arrangement switches on a dime.
Mm-hmm.
On the live versions, or the live version, I should say, that the whole band plays on in the 1978 show, it's a lot smoother with transition, because they're all playing it live. But like on the record, it does kind of feel like an edit. I'm not entirely sure if it is, but it feels like a splice onto a different, something different. But then the way it kind of melts back into the song with that held note and the reverb is mesmerizing. So good.
Wonder what the stars look like coming out tonight. Tell my girl she must be strong. She sits and waits all night long. Yeah, just looking for a better day. She'll have to find another way to go.
Yeah, so we have this bridge out of nowhere that ends with this kind of big power chord that takes us into the guitar solo.
Oh,
what a guitar solo.
It is one of my favorites. It's hard not for me to throw this in with like Comfortably Numb, but it's one of those songs. I think this guitar solo, there is not one note that isn't perfect. Tim Rennick playing it, a monster guitar solo.
To go.
Yeah, Tim Renwick was one of those British studio guys that just played on lots of records. Of course, he worked with Alan Parsons a lot, which is probably how he ended up on this project. He played with Pink Floyd live, and he worked with Eric Clapton and Elton John. Just, one of those guys with a pretty impressive resume. I'm pretty sure he's playing a Fender Strat. It sounds pretty Stratty to me, but it's just... It's a great guitar tone. It starts kind of clean, and then it gets a little more distorted, more bite to it, more echo in the middle. He's doing these harmonics. It's very cool. it gets heavier and more intense as it progresses, and just ends with that big power chord. It's a really well structured solo, really well performed, and the way they've recorded it just makes it even better. It's a great moment. He deserves a gold star for this one.
Absolutely. And my favorite thing about this solo, this was actually the reason I kind of dug up the chords. I kind of wanted to see what that big moment in the solo, what it was doing. So most of the songs in D minor, or kind of moving around a D minor chord. The part of the solo that I'm thinking of is when it goes you're moving into major chords there. You're moving into an F, C, a B flat 7, and a D minor, and then right as it goes to that run, that's an A flat diminished chord resolving to an A, which is just an amazing run of chords for that solo, because that solo, as great as it is, like once it starts snarling, when it really takes off on that F chord, it is a chills moment. As great as the whole solo is, that one moment when that string bends is just one of my favorite things in the Al Stewart catalog. Absolutely fantastic. It's one of those things that, when you're listening to this record, this comes around and you're like, wow, I didn't expect a minor key, at least not moody like this song by Al Stewart. You're getting into the song and the song's great. And then this guitar solo completely pushes it over.
Yeah.
And you listen to the song and you're like, yeah, this song probably can't get better. It does, like that's one of the best things about it. Like the way it does soar during that section, and like the different, we have the first verse, the second verse comes in, brings in the drums.
Yeah.
By the time we're in the solo, just like everything is kind of just peaking, and I love it. Absolutely love it. It's always a chills moment for me. Always.
It's so well structured. It's cinematic.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, this is track number 3 on this album, which is a interesting placement for it.
Oh yeah.
This to me feels like a side one ender or a side 2, or even maybe the last song on the album. But to put it that far up front on the record, it's kind of a shock.
Yeah. Yeah. And coming after the one issue that I kind of do have with the Time Passages album is I don't love the sequencing of it. I don't know how I would restructure all of it, but Life in Dark Water would absolutely be a side ender on either side.
Yeah.
I think that End of the Day is a great song to end the album with, but Life in Dark Water I think should absolutely be at least a side A closer. That's me sidetracking on something not important to anybody except me.
Yeah, well, I'm an album guy,
Yeah,
and so
me too.
A lot of times how I feel about songs is impacted in the context of an album,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I tend to not listen to songs, I listen to albums. As much as this podcast is about songs, I'm typically, I'm putting on an album and I'm listening it front to back.
Yeah.
And how things feel in the context of that. So I'm with you. So after the guitar solo, we get into the third verse. There's guitar fills throughout the verse, more tasty Tim Renwick playing. This is the verse where we get the lines, "No memory, tell me what's wrong with me. Why am I alone here with no rest?"
No memory, tell me what's wrong with me. Why am I alone here with no rest? And now the name of the ship is not the same. How long has it been, Marie Celeste?
And then there's the Marie Celeste or Mary Celeste reference. And now the name of the ship's not the same. How long has it been, Marie Celeste?
Now, this is something that I didn't even realize this until I read the lyrics. Not kind of clocking what the line before it was. I always took it as, how long has it been, comma, Marie Celeste? Like he was talking about another ship.
Right, or referencing it, right?
Yes. I never clocked that he was speaking about the ship that he's on.
Right. He's I guess kind of losing it.
Yeah.
And he thinks he's on the Marie Celeste.
Yes. Yeah. Which completely opened up as soon as I read it. I was like, oh, I never even realized that's what he was trying to get across there.
No memory, tell me what's wrong with me. Why am I alone here with no rest? And now the name of the ship is not the same. How long has it been, Marie Celeste?
Tell me what's wrong with me. I don't know. We don't know. We don't, it's, yeah. And then the verse wraps up with, now there's nobody from the crew left, 500 years supply of food just for me.
Yeah.
Now there's nobody from the crew left, 500 years supply of food just for me. They'll never know how strange life and dark water can be.
I mean, cinematic lyrics, right? Just the whole thing.
And essentially the end of the story. That's all we get.
Yeah, that's all we get. And we don't know what happens to him. We don't know anything. Just still to this day, 500 years of food, right? Still to this day, he could be an 80-year-old man still at the bottom of the sea in this submarine.
I mean, Al Stewart could choose to write a sequel. He has chosen so far not to, and to leave the listeners hanging.
Yeah. Really intriguing lyrics. And then we got, there's just a huge ending, more of that kind of tinkling piano. And then we ride out on now very blatant sonar pings.
They'll never know how strange life and dark water can be.
And also that last chord is fantastic.
Yeah.
I would love to know what that is. I something tells me that if I was to look it up online, I would not get an accurate answer. But there's something funky going on with that last chord. The site I'm looking at has it as a D major 7 sus2. So I will need to try that later to see if that's actually the case. But yeah, it's just one of those chords you haven't heard in the song.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just ending on this note of uncertainty is really the only way I could probably put it.
Right. It's not fully resolved.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It just as the story is not resolved, just as those sonar pings just kind of fade like they could still be going today, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just cinematic. There's a lot of ways to write a song. There's the personal revelations, there's opening your soul, there's all, those kind of things. There's twists and ways to turn cliches and all of that. But, one way to write a song is to kind of tell a story. And to me, this is one of my favorite story type of songs. It's not a personal thing. He's telling a story, but you're only getting this like one chapter in the middle of a book.
Absolutely. Not what you expect from Al Stewart.
No, not at all. And I think that's one of the things that drew me in from the beginning, is because it's not what I expected when I put this record on for the first time.
Yeah.
I didn't expect to hear a track like this. And again, as we said, it's one of the first songs you hear and really grabs you. Just a great track. So tell me how you got into Al Stewart.
It's a very strange story. So always loved Ear of the Cat, but never sought it out, never owned it. I take that back. I did own it on a K-Tel album. I believe the album was called Stars, and it also had either Beth or Rock and Roll All Night on it.
Did it have like 30 songs on one vinyl record? Was it one of those?
It's a K-Tel album. Of course it did. So it was one of those songs like that, Torn Between Two Lovers, like all those are on this album and represent a very specific period of time of me being a toddler. So I grew up with this album in the house. So I knew Year of the Cat from that. There was a friend of mine, Otto, who I used to, in my 30s, we would often, there was a karaoke place. We were the two guys that might have been a little too old to be hanging out at the bar. But we would go there and we would do karaoke. And I remember one of the times coming out, it was like a block or two from my house. So we would walk there. But for some reason, he had his car and he drove there. And he's like, I gotta hear Year of the Cat before I go home. And we're sitting in the parking lot and he's just sitting in the car and he's playing Year of the Cat on his car stereo. And he is blissing out in his car, just like it's the best thing he's ever heard. And me having always kind of enjoyed the song, I was like, okay, this might be the time where I dig further in. When I sought out Year of the Cat after that, probably the next day or whatever, I specifically remember sitting at my desk at work listening to it on a loop for 8 hours while I worked. I did not shut the song off. Shortly after I bought the album, and then Otto turned me on to Time Passages. And then after that, I just I moved in different directions. One of the first things I grabbed was the Uncorked live album. So this had to be around 2009. I saw him shortly thereafter 3 times with Dave Nachmanoff, who's a guitarist. They were acoustic shows. Al pretty much played rhythm, and Dave riffed on top of him like a madman. The Uncorked album, it's also a nice way to get into other eras of Al Stewart. It's not kind of hits focused. It doesn't have Year of the Cat, doesn't have Time Passages. It's all deeper cuts. Life in Dark Waters on there. Fantastic version. But after those 3 shows, I was like, I'm in. One of the most disappointing moments of my life was buying the 8-track to Year of the Cat to have him sign it, because I was like, this is a conversation piece right here. He's going to be like, oh, I haven't seen one of these. And no, he didn't say a word about it. He threw a signature on there and handed it back. So I was like, well, okay, yeah. But he's a super nice guy and just like a storyteller, which is something that, we kind of talked about it in terms of song. but he is also a storyteller. His song intros are maybe second to none. But if you have a chance to check him out, I absolutely would. And then I just started listening to the whole catalog and realized I loved every bit of it. There are hidden gems all over the catalog. But right in the middle, you have Year of the Cat and Time Passages. If you're going to pick two, those are probably the two to pick. And then if you were going to go further, I'd go backwards a little bit. Modern Times, Past, Present, and Future. Maybe forward a little bit. Oh, absolutely, 24 Parrots. The live album, Indian Summer, fantastic. Also great. Except for that stupid thing they do where they fade every song out on the original vinyl. The CD is not like that. These are the kind of things I can contribute, Brad, from having owned literally every incarnation of Al Stewart CDs that have been released.
That's good to know. So on the vinyl, they fade out the live tracks, but on the CD, they do not.
Correct. Yeah. I bought a couple of vinyl copies thinking maybe it was like the first run, but every vinyl copy I got fades them out. So super weird. But remember, there's a 38 disc box set called the Admiralty Lights at the end of this, if that's a road you want to go down. And that is a road that I did go down. So, yeah, tons of Al Stewart out there, and I couldn't be happier.
Thank you so much for the recommendations. Thanks for coming on and talking about this song and for the education on Al Stewart. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on. Always a pleasure.
It's always a pleasure to have you on. Thank you, Craig. And thank you for joining Craig and I on this journey deep into dark water. If you'd like to revisit any of my previous episodes, you'll find them all on our website at lovethatsongpodcast.com, or just look for them in your favorite podcast app. If you'd like to support the show, all I ask is that you share it with your friends. Tell people about the show, because we count on your word of mouth to grow our audience and to celebrate and preserve this music. I'll be back in approximately 15 days with another new episode, so let's get together then. Thank you for coming aboard for this edition on Al Stewart and Life in Dark Water.